Off top, we're going to film this podcast in America. Always. Play the music.
This is the Domonique Foxworth Show.
Welcome to the Domonique Foxworth Show. I'm Domonique Foxworth. I'm joined by Charlie Kravitz and a special guest. Yeah, we got inside jokes. Our good friend, Caspian Kang, whom I did not know. Not only is he a writer, but he's a documentary director. I didn't know that. And he's a Grantland alumni and an author, right? Did I miss any of your very impressive credits?
No. Honestly, most of those are defunct at this point, so... so thank you for reminding me of my past.
You were nominated for awards and stuff. You got to hold on to that. It's not defunct.
There's always tomorrow, I guess.
And a tennis fan.
That's what we started with. Charlie is talking about you. He said he could beat you in tennis.
I bet you could beat me in tennis. I'm terrible, man. I don't even know how to serve.
It's just about loving tennis. Tennis is just being into it. And Domonique, I'm not allowed to talk about tennis most of the time.
That's because I like people to stay tuned in. That's all.
All right, well,
we can talk about it at the important tennis times, but we're going to talk about basketball today.
All right, Kevin Durant. Dead. I think this is like the perfect crossover topic. We haven't talked about Kevin Durant in like 7 months. Domonique glazes him. He glaze maxes Kevin Durant, as the youths would say. I feel the opposite about this. I do find him to be hilarious. Yeah, and what we have is something that's being referred to online as the KD files. And whether or not this is Kevin Durant hasn't been confirmed or denied yet, but it appears that we have a leak of a Twitter group chat where he has a burner called Get Off My Dickerson, where he has absolutely eviscerated almost every teammate and organization he has ever played for, including the current one with the Houston Rockets. Allegedly. Right. I said appeared. We don't know if this
I felt like it needed to be reinstated. Like you started to say it was like we needed to remind
Get Off My Dickerson. I said all of these things, whether or not it's Kevin Durant or not.
Right. Fair.
So he has gone after Alperen Şengün, Steven Adams from his current thing. He went after Jabari Smith Jr. He talked about Devin Booker and Frank Vogel and called them Stalin and Hitler or Mussolini and Kim Jong-un.
Goodness gracious.
He...
I feel like the Westbrook one.
Yeah, called the triple-double cocaine bear.
That's just good writing. That's just good writing, right?
He talked about Steph Curry not being able to watch film and him being the only one who held Steph accountable. He said that Kyrie Irving was Kyrie Irving acted like he in his cereal. And that he was shocked that he expected Kyrie Irving to expect Luka Doncic to play ethical hoops and that he was sort of sucking up to the white European guy. That's the larger once-over of it.
Right.
And this has been sort of leaked. He was on his phone a bunch right before the All-Star games. I find this to be hilarious. What's your read in looking at this? Because this is also, you could go undignified. You could go with, we just had the discussion about Chris Paul and the end of his career being so bizarre without just fizzled out. And Kevin Durant's on a 6-year odyssey of weirdness.
If we're assuming that it's true,
yes. Oh, sorry. Get Off My Dickerson is saying this, not Kevin Durant.
Putting aside the fact that it's funny and we all talk about our coworkers to our friends and family, and that's not a problem. Like, I'm less offended by it than you are. I think if it is him, it's the fact that he talked to his friend, or he talked about his coworkers to people who would leak this type of information. Because I actually am not super offended by it. I don't know, Jay, you bothered?
Well, first of all, I think we need to acknowledge that 48 hours have passed since this news came out, and Kevin Durant has not tweeted at all.
Yes.
And somebody, look, this is the level of journalism that I'm going to submit the listeners to, but I saw somebody ask Grok when was the last time Kevin Durant took a 48-hour break, and it was 2017, according to Grok, from tweeting. So, that's the first Trump administration. That's right after Trump gave his inauguration speech, and all of us are like, oh no. And that's the last time Kevin Durant didn't tweet for 48 hours.
Oh, God. That is amazing.
I've had longer Twitter breaks than that, And so I I think that is, I don't want to say anything binding, but that does seem significant to me, because it would be very easy for him to just say, this isn't me, right? But he didn't. And I think the thing that struck me the most about it was that it seemed like from the other people who were in the chat and the stuff that we saw and some things that I have heard, it just seems like some of these people didn't really know him that well. You know, this is like a Twitter group chat. Right. It's not him and his friends talking about it. Like every workplace, you are in a group chat with people talking about your coworkers. And it also could be that like those same coworkers are in another group chat that are talking about you, right? Yeah. But that's all like private chat stuff. When you're doing it on Twitter and a lot of the people are just your fans and maybe people have stuck up for you that get invited in, that's the part that it makes it a little bit like almost sad to me, where it's like, all right, man, why are you trying to impress these dudes? But mostly Charlie, the sad part is like 5% of my feeling. The 95% of it is just, you know, I share with Charlie just a sense that this is hilarious, because I also don't like Kevin Durant.
Yeah, I'm the lone Durant defender, but it's making it really hard. I'm actually like, my opinion. Oh, no. Yeah, you don't have to like or defend or support him to find it funny. Like, no matter how you feel about him, it's objectively hilarious. I think I've lost some of my desire to support some of the things that he's done in the past, not because of this, but I thought the way that you pointed out about how this end of his career, and we've talked about this before, I pointed out how I thought Kevin Durant had the like most disappointing all-time great career of like any all-time great that we've had, considering like all the ways that his career could have gone. This was not the best version. It could have been much better. And then we have it to end this way. I didn't expect it to get worse. If this is the end of his career, I imagine over a decade or so we might forget this, but this is a really bad way for us to a bad taste in our mouths for the way that Kevin Durant's career would end, bouncing from team to team. And
Dominique, are you a little bit sad that you didn't get invited to the Twitter group chat?
No, I'm not on Twitter. I would never get invited to the Twitter group chat because I don't tweet that much, but I'm fine.
Just as a notable Kevin Durant guy?
I'm not a notable Kevin Durant guy. You try to get me angry before we even get into the meat of the show.
Well, then here's the thing is like, Jay brought up this point of being like, these aren't his friends. And that's like,
that's the saddest part.
Because of the nomadic journey, it doesn't feel like, I don't know who like Kevin Durant's crew is. Like, I understand that with a lot of, even if it's just like the basketball crew of like, whether it's LeBron or Steph or other great players. And like, this feels emblematic of kind of his sort of the way he has. I mean, it's the unique friendships via his iPhone.
Yeah. It's experience Kevin Durant had in his life is probably a pretty unique one. So like, I am still surprised that it doesn't seem like there is some group, but we're not sure that there's not another group. Like, just because he's talking in his group chat doesn't we're making a huge leap to assume that he's not talking elsewhere with actual real live physical friends that are close to him. Like, that's a huge leap. Stop it. He's got friends.
I mean, it's like I think all of us are in media enough where we maybe have been around some people that the public is interested in, right? Where they would be interested in knowing stuff about you, or that person not about you, and they see, and you know that when you're talking to those people, that the thing that they really want to hear is for you to talk about the person, right? So if they come up and they're like, well, how's this person that you know in sports media or Dominique, in your case, like people that you might have played with, right? And what are they looking for? They're looking for you to
actually, more than anything, I get people throwing me alley-oops to dunk on Stephen A. That's always it. I'm like, right. I really got nothing for you.
I've never actually gonna ask you that stuff. You know, like, what was Ray Lewis like, or something like that.
And I got plenty of good.
I have a million times,
and I always give the good stories. Right. It's like all positive, and I don't have any bad things to say about any of my teammates. That's not, I mean, I don't know. That's me, but I'm not Kevin Durant. And like the basketball players are different. Like the culture of basketball is entirely different. It is like very individual, like isolated. Each isolated like person is their own corporation, and I don't feel as much. Oh wow!
Wait, so you feel like this would not have happened in the NFL because of team culture compared to the NBA? You feel like this is an NBA specific? Like, you would be more surprised if an NFL player came out and did this?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know that I would attribute it only to the team culture thing. I think the NBA stars journey from the time, especially if you're particularly talented or extra tall when you're young, like the journey for that star is much different than anyone else. So,
who's the quarterback who would be in this situation?
Yeah, it would have that.
It's only a quarterback.
It'd have to be a quarterback who was awesome from the time that they were 12 to the time, but it's still like football is an incredibly conservative, like, group sport. It gets beat out of you in football. No one really exists in football to that point, and you are a lot more dependent on your teammates. Like, there is an appreciation for guys who do different jobs because you can't do that. I imagine it's really hard to walk in the locker room as a 7-foot guy with the handles of a guard. You do everything better than everybody on the team.
What's hard about that?
No, yeah, that's fair. It's not hard. I'm saying that, hard's the wrong word. I imagine that it puts you in a position where you are looking at these people very differently than if you are a quarterback who can't block for himself. Like, you may be the best quarterback in the league, but you can't block, you can't catch, you can't tackle. Is there something to be said for the impact that dependence has on you?
Oh yeah, well, I think the person that would most do that is Aaron Rodgers, right? But Aaron Rodgers says nothing bad about his teammates ever. In fact, like, whenever he talks about his teammates, that's like the most likable Aaron Rodgers ever is, right? Like, everybody and his teammates seem to like him. So, yeah, I think you might be right.
He's had a couple. I mean, of course, there are some issues, and Aaron Rodgers had a couple, like, distance Packers teammates who
Mercedes Lewis wasn't that the one?
Was it Donald Driver? Right?
It was. I thought it was a tight end too. It was like he wouldn't even give me.
Anyway,
I don't know if Mercedes Lewis even played there, but I can't remember.
A guy who's had a career as long as him, he is the one that you would think might do something like that. But that's
Caleb. But that's like sort of based on his, like, what we thought before this year. Yeah. That seems like like the writing on Caleb from this offseason.
I'm sure that it might be even less likely in other sports, but I don't know those sports nearly as well. And I feel like it wasn't a point that I was looking to make, but I think it's true. There's something to be said for the upbringing of the superstar NBA player and how isolating it is and how it must feel to be on the team and be one of the greatest players of all time and just look at everybody and think these guys stink. That doesn't mean you should say it, but he does.
I mean, I think it's interesting that there's no one's off limits. It's Steph, Draymond, Kerr, Westbrook, Harden, Booker, Steven Adams, Alperen Sengun, Jabari. Like, it's everyone.
Not Ben Simmons, though. He was nice about Ben Simmons.
Yeah, he liked Ben Simmons
because he passed him the ball. Yeah.
Well, I don't understand why you think why it would be isolating just to be, like, at a totally different skill level than this. Like, isn't that I'm like sort of confused on what your thought on why this would be, like, hard for him.
No, hard is the wrong word. I think it's a unique existence, and I think that there aren't guidelines. There's not a playbook. There's not, like, a class that you can go to because not very many people experience.
But there kind of is, though, because the NBA has, like, we've seen, like, this monoculture of the NBA where there's so much media training. These guys are all so robotic, and, like, we've seen this from, it really started in, like, post Kareem in, like, 1980. You've Magic and Bird, followed by Jordan, followed by, like, the Shaq, followed by, like, the rebrand of Kobe and LeBron. Like, we actually do have a star playbook on how to interact with teammates.
You're misunderstanding what I'm saying.
Yeah,
I know that we have a star playbook. They follow the star playbook. The star playbook does not get into how you actually live your life. There are not, like, actual functions for it's how you present yourself. It's about being outwardly bland. It's about presenting yourself as a corporation. It's not about how you actually go about developing as a human. If you are a star from the time that you are 15 years old, everyone sees you as an opportunity for themselves as a way to better their own position and encourage you to get better at basketball, and no one challenges you and no one pushes back. When's the first time you think someone said to Kevin Durant, like, hey, shut up, sit down, do this, do that?
I'm certain it was Russell Westbrook.
Exactly.
Or actually, Navarro Bowman claims he was better at basketball when he was 14 than Durant and Beasley.
Either way.
He was like, I was the star of that team.
But the bottom line is that all of us go through life.
Draymond, then he ran.
All right. All of us go through life bumping up against a bunch of different things that sand off our edges. And I think allows us to fit appropriately into society and behave in a way that is that we all agree upon and we accept. I think that it's different. I'm not saying that anything's wrong with it, but I think when you have this experience as a child star your entire life, there's some things that you are not prepared for. And I'm not surprised, or there's some parts of your character or personality that have not been developed. And I'm not surprised that he behaves like a high schooler on social media. Like, that doesn't shock me.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these guys now at this point, it wasn't so much true earlier, but certainly his generation onward, like all they've done really is play basketball. They play so much, and they're put in these programs and AAU programs and training programs at such an early age that all they really do is play basketball. And, I don't mean to bring this back to the sport that we're not supposed to talk about, but it is a lot like tennis now, right? Like, it used to be in tennis, you went to a Bolletary and when you're 14 years old, 13 years old, and your life was over, right? That's what it's, and that as a result, you have a whole bunch of people, tennis players who had completely arrested development in terms of social norms and everything like that. And now basketball players are like that too. Whereas I think 25 years ago, that probably wasn't as true. And it's just getting increasingly true. And if you can't go outside and you're a person who is not really craving that, and it seems like KD, to his credit, is not the type of person who wants to walk into a club and like be a celebrity. The thing that you have is your phone. And so it does kind of make sense that he would get caught up in that world and that he would act in a lot of ways, the same way that us in the media act, in terms of whether or not that social media world is real or not.
He would do the greatest post-game show ever when he retires.
Yeah.
If he just sat up there and essentially podcasted and talked about people, it would be unbelievable. Because his brain rot, he'd have every single online thing about them.
As soon as Jay was talking about KD in the club, I just remembered
the jump shot.
Yeah, he was practicing. The one time we did see video of KD in the club, he was practicing his jumper.
And him saying he goes days without showering just to develop a must.
Despicable.
So that's hilarious. See, these are the things where I end up like coming around to thinking KD's hilarious.
Yeah, he definitely is hilarious. You don't have to like him or root for him.
It's just he ruined the NBA for 3 years.
Yeah, which I would defend that decision, and I think that part of the reason why we are, and not that basketball is dead. I don't want to overplay that point or it's in some super dire situation, but I think that is like a point that I used to defend that I recognize was kind of part of the problem, was like this idea that you could, that if it was legal, it was okay to do. I don't know, like that to me feels like a core issue with a lot of what's wrong with the NBA today. Is like we've gone into like an optimization culture that removes the guardrails that shame used to provide. So like
you're talking about going to teams, load management, tanking. I'm talking, like free agency, all of these things where there used to be like even if there wasn't a rule against it, it was sort of like a unspoken agreement. Like, this is how this professional sport.
Jay, I feel like an old man because it feels like I'm looking at sports in general. It's not just basketball, but basketball is probably the most exaggerated version of it. But I feel like I've just gotten to the point where I'm like, back in my day, we wouldn't have done that. And I'm part of the problem because I was one of the guys who was rightfully, I think, saying you're exploiting college athletes. You shouldn't play in the bowl game if you're not getting paid in the bowl game. Like you should not extend yourself in the All-Star game and risk injury if you're not getting any extra compensation. If you have the power and leverage to force your team to trade you or spend money or sign a contract, you should go ahead and do that because they're doing it to you. Like, I don't think I was ever wrong for saying any of that stuff, but I think that some of this is where we are in the NBA today as a result of us creating cover and removing the shame that is associated with some of those decisions.
Oh, for sure. I mean, there's like a balance, right, that everybody has to go through where you say, okay, I agree with these things in principle, but am I really going to pretend that I enjoy watching the product on the field or on the court, right? I'm a very big UNC basketball fan. This year, our team has one player, I think, who played on the team last year. So we're playing against Duke. We beat Duke. Right. It's amazing. But still, like, I watch a lot of the games. I forget who the players are, and I'm like, who is that guy? Who is that guy? Right. And obviously the stars I can recognize, but there's no continuity. We have a totally new team. We'll have a totally new team next year too. And so then I'm like, well, I think it's good that the transfer portal exists. I think it's good that NIL exists. I think it was bad that the coaches could trap these players into these places. Also, I believe in individual freedom. And so why couldn't a college player decide to go play somewhere else and get paid more? And yet, I'm not going to take that extra step, which maybe 5 years ago I might have just kind of pretended anyway. But at this point, I'm just like, well, I'm not enjoying what I'm watching, but I'm okay with enjoying it a little bit less so that the principles and the economy and the labor position that these kids are in is better. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's hard to simultaneously somehow argue that it's better. Although it does seem like in college football, like nobody seems to care, right? Like people still love it that like Fernando Mendoza started. I live in Berkeley. He started out here in Cal, right? And like and nobody cares, right? He went to Indiana and they won.
Yeah. I mean, I think people do care, and I think what's happened to college sports in general, and we can stick on college basketball because, like you, I grew up. My dad's from Charlotte, and he was a big UNC fan. I grew up watching loving, getting hyped for the ACC tournament and loving to watch those games and having a good time with it. To now, it's like Carolina Duke happens, and I don't find out who won until the morning after because my dad texts me because I don't care nearly as much. And I think that is also like a part of, and it's not just. I think we could go to like Darryn Peterson, who's the best player in college basketball right now and soon to be a number 1 overall pick and impact guy that Charlie's been raving about for months now for Kansas. And like the decisions that he is making now.
Raving and complaining, for the record.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, it's just, I think the story's fascinating. It's just like, I genuinely don't remember like a 6'2" guard who's a freshman being this developed. Like, Domonique was asking me about him last night, and I was like, he doesn't really need to change anything to be like an NBA All-Star caliber player in a couple of years. Like, he already shoots the ball well enough. He's really slithery. He can handle the ball. But he has a mysterious cramping or quad or hamstring injury. He's had ankle things. He's missed games with flu. He's taken himself out. He's tried sometimes and just eviscerated teams. He like sort of walked through the motions against Iowa State recently. And it's just like a very strange situation because if after the third game of the season when he had his hamstring flare up, if he's like, I'm shutting it down and going to the draft, I wouldn't have thought twice about it. Yeah. But him, whether we're overthinking it, but like sort of self-load managing this situation, it feels very hard to like understand. It feels very anti-competitive. And it also feels like a massive flip from, I mean, Jay, like you think about college basketball for a long time, the protagonists, like obviously there were teams that were cohesive, but the protagonists were the coaches, whether it was Roy Williams, Krzyzewski, Tony Bennett, Jay Wright, et cetera, and that whole thing is gone. And even though Bill Self's still at Kansas, it feels like the dynamic has flipped completely, that the like high impact freshmen who are getting paid between $5 and $12 million, whatever their NIL evaluation is, are now controlling everything. And you have this ultra talented special 18-year-old kid deciding how much he's played. And again, I'm editorializing here. He might have real injuries here, but this is what it feels like from the outside.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like a fan of the Sacramento Kings, and we might get the first pick, and I wouldn't want to draft him if I was being honest, right? Because I just think that...
Really?
Yeah, because like I wouldn't want to draft Boozer either because I hate Duke, but also I just think he's too below the rim and...
Heavy legs.
Yeah, I think I would take the bouncer, but like the with Peterson, it's just like why are you not trying right now? Like, what more do you need? You have a probably top 3 home crowd in the country, right? You went to Kansas probably for that reason. I mean, some of it would be money, but you would have gotten paid anywhere, right? You have this one-time experience. Nobody really expects that much out of you. They just want you to come out and play what amounts to like 15 home games or something like that. Go to the NCAA tournament. Wasn't there a time in your childhood where you dreamed about this, where you're excited about it? And why can't you just go do it, right? And so if people are arguing, well, it's because there's millions of dollars on the line, that's not true. He could blow out his ACL tomorrow and he would still be like a top 3 pick, right? And if you have that mentality, then why go to college at all, right? Why not do what some of the other guys do and take a year or go play abroad or something like that, or go play in the G League or something like that? All of which would have been options for him. Now, ideally, I think that he probably should have been able to just go skip the college thing and go to the pros. Mm-hmm. But at this point, like within this system, I just have so many questions about him. and his mindset are just like, well, are you ever going to want to compete, right? Because we do have players now who just seem to be they're like, I'm going to compete when I compete, and it's going to be amazing. Like a certain somebody who scored 31 points in the All-Star game just now, right? And those people, I think, if we're being honest, are very frustrating players to follow, right? It's just they're just frustrating,
right? But I think and this is where Charlie will accuse me of being a player apologist, because it is their choice and it is them doing this thing. But I do think that it's a cultural trickle down from the top, which is where this is how the game is played in the NBA, where we've moved to this optimization where everything has to be perfectly timed. You have to load manage, or forget that as a Kings fan, you probably recognize as a team that wants to have a big star and wants to make a run to the championship, you recognize around you that teams are tanking and trying to lose. And back to the point about shame, there was a point when shame was enough for at least teams to pretend like they weren't tanking and give us some facade that they were actually trying, or at least try. And we've gotten to the point now where I know the Jazz became a big story where they're not even pretending. And I think that influence on the culture has kind of bled all the way down to these lower levels, where a guy who is obviously going to be a high pick and is going to be a great player in the NBA, he knows that all that matters, or all that we care about, is him optimizing his opportunity to get to the NBA. Right. So he's like, why am I going to go so hard right now? And then when he gets to the NBA, all that's going to matter is that he optimizes chances to perform well in the playoffs. So he's going to be encouraged to load manage and to not attack every game very hard. So I think that it's a result of us giving cover to all this and us watching teams tank and not ripping them to shreds. Us almost turning into mini GMs where we're like, oh no, but the incentives are that you do this. No.
Right. Which is what Mark Cuban was encouraging.
Yeah, that's nonsense.
This tweet that Mark Cuban put out that was viral, or thread of tweets, where he was basically like, the NBA doesn't have a tanking problem. It has a problem with fan accessibility and affordability, et cetera. Teams should want to tank or
I'm sorry.
Fans. I'm just, that's what it
I saw the tweet, and I'm sorry, Jay, to bring you on only to yell at you, because it's not your fault, but it drives me nuts that it feels like when we were younger, and I'm fine with standing on my yelling to get people off my lawn, because I'm completely comfortable with the position that I'm in, because it felt like back in my day, everybody wanted to be the players, and it changes the dynamic when everyone is an apologist for the front office. Oh no, I get why they suck. I want my team to stink. That you should be embarrassed that you come to work every day with a goal of stinking. That's all. And I think that is part of all of this stuff, where we, as much as I appreciate and respect the analytics and what they've brought to the game, there's plenty of good stuff that's come to the game by analytics, but it has somewhat engulfed the culture where we treat this like it's a company, like we're selling hamburgers. This is supposed to be art. It's supposed to be fun. And now we're at this optimization, monetization, and everyone has to do exactly what is best for them. And we put all these players through this conveyor belt of photocopying of old superstars, and we end up with boring nonsense and people rooting for losers.
Yeah,
Sorry, Jay.
I think it's two things, right? The first thing, it was fantasy sports started, and people started to think about themselves as managers and how to be smart and sharp, right? And then the second thing that happened is I think that Moneyball got published, and that it had a huge effect, not just in people who are interested in sports, but in the management class of America, right? And so I just remember I had 2 bosses in a row, and they were like, well, I'm taking a Moneyball approach to this, right? To this job, or to this company. And both of the times I was like, well, how do you want me to respond to that? Do you mean that you're going to pay me less? What am I supposed to do? Congratulate you? Oh, great. I'm glad that you see me as just this expendable asset that you're trying to undercut their salary all the time. And that became shorthand for the way that smart people did things. And because of, I think, a combination of both, the fact that the media narrative, which is obviously made up of people like myself, where you go to good schools and you try and become part of management, you're more sympathetic to the people in management. When you become a sports reporter, you realize that there are people that you can talk to who will always be available for you, and there are people who will feel a little bit scary and inaccessible, right? So you look at the landscape of NBA GMs, for example. If you have a bunch of people who went to Harvard with you, or to Wesleyan with you, or whatever fancy school you went to, and then there's a bunch of ex-players, you're going to feel more comfortable around the the smart, nerdy dudes, right, who didn't play. Right. And so then all that builds up over the years, and what ends up happening is that you have both the media and the fan perspective from fantasy turning into essentially a pro-management propaganda machine, right? Like, it drives me crazy when people say, oh, this is a good contract, you know, like, oh, they have a good, this is a good, and for who? Because they always just mean that they're underpaying the guy, right? And I'm just like, that's not a good contract. Like, why would the assumption of good and bad always be on the side of management in that point, right? You're a fan. You paid to see the player. You didn't pay to see the GM. And so, I think that type of, like, I think it's a form of, honestly, insanity that has just become so normalized at this point. And I think it's also why people, like, kind of don't enjoy even watching the games at this point, right? Because it's just, you think about it as a transaction. I think that, I don't mean to keep ranting, but like, the last thing I'll say
No, I love it.
I think that what happened was that at some point Adam Silver realized that the real attention to his league was all transactional, right? And that Adam Silver has that has ways of controlling what the media narrative around his league is. The NBA PR machine is the most aggressive and hostile PR machine I've ever encountered in my years as a reporter. And the people that they give access to are all transactional people. That's how you have Woj, you have Shams, right? Like, he can turn the NBA's narrative into a transactions narrative. And so then, of course, that's also going to reinforce the idea that the transactions are the things that matter in the NBA. And so, like, you just in the end have like a spreadsheet, and it's starting to backfire, I think, finally, right? Like, right.
And that's the argument that I've been having with a number of people that'll point to, like, the revenue growing up or franchise values going up. And I'm like, that's a indicator that's not connected at all. Like, tell the truth. Right. Are you more excited about games now than you were before? Like, anybody who I talk to who's like old enough does not talk about the NBA as a place where the games are more exciting than they once were, because they just aren't. Right. And I think it's not that long ago when this culture was still in existence. Like, you can go back to Zion hurting himself in college and still playing, like, busting his shoe.
7 years ago. I actually watched that last night when we were talking about it. Because, like, it was way more gruesome than I thought. And given that he's, like, pulled his hamstring, like, jogging down the court, it's kind of crazy that wasn't a more serious injury. But, like, he came back in 3 weeks, and that was... I mean, that's the most hyped I've been for a Carolina Duke game in a long time. I guess since UNC ended Coach K's career, which ruled.
But one of the greatest moments of my life.
I was cackling. It was the best.
We beat them in Cameron, and then we beat them in the Final Four.
The second one in the Final Four was like, I just thought there was no chance Carolina was going to win that game.
It felt egregious. Honestly, it felt like awesome. I felt like sinful when it happened. You know, I was like, this is gluttony at this point. It's too much.
It was the only time it didn't like actually matter. I mean, I know they ended up losing that 15-point lead in the national championship game, which is a bummer. We're all Carolina fans actually on this pod, but it kind of didn't even matter.
No, it didn't matter. I didn't care at all. Yeah.
But with the Zion thing, it's crazy because we like pressed him, and everyone thought it was like, okay, just go to the NBA, get over it. And he wanted to come back, and like we joke about the boiling frog metaphor on this show a lot, but that's kind of what's happened with some of this stuff as it's trickled down to players, is like you get so used to it, whether it's so-and-so sitting out for X, Y, and Z, or the commoditization of this player or that player.
That's the thing.
And then when it comes to Peterson, like I want, like you said you don't want Darryn Peterson on the Kings. And like I've wrestled with this as a Wizards fan where I'm like, I actually think as a prospect, like he is somewhere above like the Derrick Rose, Zion level prospect, and just a hair below Anthony Davis and below Durant of like, I think I don't remember a guard being this skilled, but like, I think he's like clears the field. And then I'm like, but then we're also the Wizards, and like a guy who might not view himself as wanting to be like a Wizard, like this could be a disaster. Yeah. So like, it's really hard to cope with. It's become, it's thrown in our face. Like right now, it's like we're forced to address it.
I think what drives me most crazy about it is, and this is where I am more than happy to put on my pro player hat, my pro labor, my player apologist hat, and defend the idea that something is new or different about these players. I'll say that they are, but I also think that when you hear people everywhere talking about you like you're an asset, you would be a fool to not protect yourself as such, because it's reinforcing the idea that this is a business and it's not about team or anything like that. And when people like ask me what was your favorite team you ever been a part of, like I think about it, it's it's progression from high school all the way up until the end of my career in football. It's like they felt less and less like teams.
Really?
It felt more and more like, it felt more and more like business. College was it. Like college was where it felt where we were all together and we were all broke. The coach was getting paid. They pissed us off. We go out and we play. We go back to our dorms and we cared about each other. We get in fights at the bar. Like we would do all of this.
Football players, that was the worst in college.
That sounds
a group
great
of football players beating the
well, not that.
we would group of football players beating the out of practice.
We did. No, that's a whole nother conversation. But I'm saying that's different. And then even my rookie year in the league, it's like, we all got here together. They're guys. We go out. We feel like we're part of the team. And then you notice that as you go along, the things change. And like, how else are you supposed to react? Like, I remember feeling that like that slight shift over the course of my career where it's like, all right, it goes from like I'm a teammate to I'm an employee. And then when you're an employee, like anyone who's listening to this, I imagine don't love their employer the way you love a team.
Right.
And you behave at work the way that you behave at work. And part of the reason why we love sports is because that's not what happened. That's not what's happening. But we ultimately create this environment where we we like argue for, like I did get up this morning. We're talking about who should and shouldn't be franchise tagged. And somehow that's interesting to fans. Like the franchise tag?
Talking about Kenneth Walker. I mean, it's just like that's just a mechanism to
I don't know. It just
keep Kenneth Walker. And
they asked me, and I said, "Don't franchise anybody."
Yeah, well, that's
we went through a list of like 5 people. No, pay them. No, pay them. No, pay them.
Well, do you think? I mean, I feel like what you're describing, Domonique, is this idea that a lot of the institutions and the norms that we had in society in terms of shame are eroding, right? And if you want to zoom out a ton, then you can say like, this is the moment where you say something like this and you're like, well, why? If you took this situation or like somebody like Darryn Peterson and you put it in some other political context, that's when everyone would start blaming the immigrants, right? Instead of blaming all of the larger saddle factors and billionaire class or whatever you want to do, right? And that's also true in sports, I think, right? You blame the players in a lot of ways for the stuff that management is doing and the stuff that ownership is doing. And yet the response can't just be, well, as a result, I think that the thing that we're watching is awesome. Like, do you think that college players right now who are like, let's say like a team like Texas or something like that, where all the players getting paid okay, do you think that they have the same sense of, and that players are cycling in and out, right? They're transferring in and out. Do you think that they have the same sense of camaraderie and fun that you had when you were playing college ball?
I don't think they have the same sense. Of course not. Like it's impossible to show up at 155 pounds with somebody and like put on the 4-year process of like all the pain and scars and injuries and ups and downs and tough losses and major wins. Like you can't simulate that. You can't microwave that in a short like amount of time. And then it's also combined with the fact that like, we couldn't afford nothing. We was all on dorms. They're now out somewhere else. And like, this is definitely a very like, looking back at my past through rose-colored glasses, because there are tons of the players on my team who contributed a bunch at college and left with injuries and no money. So like, I'm not arguing that it's better. And I recognize that I think this is some of the hardest thing about having conversations like this is like, I can argue that parts of what we have now are better and also recognize that parts of it is worse. Right. And you have to, it feels like, and I even feel myself doing it as we're having this conversation, is that I want to point at somebody or something and say, this sucks, you're wrong, you fix it. But I often have to keep reminding myself that parts of it are better, parts of it are worse. And part of the reason why it sucks and it's wrong and it's better is because I was involved in perpetuating some of that nonsense or perpetuating what I thought to be, or not what I thought to be, perpetuating the like a reach for some level of equality, which also does encourage players to behave like equals to the team,
right.
Which I was not an equal when I was in college, which is part of what I loved about it. But it feels like a roundabout way to go back to the bottom line is you should feel like a for losing on purpose. But that's all.
Other bottom line, wouldn't it be kind of cool if Darryn Peterson just wanted to win the national championship?
Great. But also, it would suck if Darryn Peterson didn't get paid while Kansas and Bill Self.
No. I'm talking about now. Like now when he's getting paid $10 million
right.
a year.
I'm saying the same thing. Yeah. No, I agree. But I don't know. I think that these things. Go ahead.
Well, how much do you think this changed the explosion of money in the NBA has like changed stuff? Because it's really eye popping, and I'm not blaming, but like probably if you go through 2 max contracts, if you're in this Peterson Debansa class and you get super max, you make a couple all NBA teams, like you might leave the NBA with more than $500 million, like conservatively.
Yeah. Jay, what do you think? Because I have strong feelings on this.
I think the players should get all paid as much as they want. I do think that if you look at how much they're getting paid now, the star level of player, that it's probably some of them, it might be difficult to figure out their motivation outside of love of the game, love of their teammates, and their own competitive desires. Not all professional athletes are really born that way. And I imagine that if we had a system where if every player was just on a 1-year contract, or that non-guaranteed contract, and they were still needing the money, that after 6 years, they still hadn't saved up enough money, that we would have a very, very different NBA, right? Players would not be in the league as long, that the talent level probably would not be as high because the incentive to develop that talent wouldn't be as high. But I bet if you want to have a bunch of dudes scrap it out and try their hardest and fight each other in the game and care, you would have way more of that, right? And there's a lot of fans. I like that too. I like watching UFC, and I think part of the reason why the UFC guys are out there pouring their everything that they've known, just years and years of martial arts training, discipline, everything like that, is because they don't get paid anything. Right. They get if they have the best fight of the night, their bonus is $200,000, which is 6 minutes of play for an NBA player. It's like them sitting on the bench for 5 minutes of a quarter. So I do think it leads to a different product. But I think that in terms of if what you want is superstars and you want stability, which is what the NBA does want, that you kind of do have, that this system is probably better for that. And if some guys like Kawhi or Paul George don't play that much, then it doesn't really matter, right? Because you still have the guys who do play.
I think you have I can't disagree with what you're saying about the impacts, and I think you laid it out well in understanding that there will be drawbacks no matter which way you have the league, which way you structure the compensation in the league. However, I also think that there's a certain level, a threshold of money that over it, nothing really changes, and I think we long past that. I don't think necessarily that you're going to get a different level of intensity for 25 million to 50 million a year.
Yeah.
I think that this is where I get back to culture and what behaviors are acceptable and what things would you be ashamed to do. And I think that they're fundamentally that is a penalty that you pay for because if I race my daughter around the track, if I decide to cut across the middle and say I won, there's no physical guardrail to say that I didn't, but I got self-respect. I would be ashamed of myself.
I'd hope so.
Right? But that's essentially what so many of these teams are doing, is they're like, no, I don't care. And the same thing is true, I guess, on the players level, but I think it trickles down. These teams are like, no, the way that I'm going to win is think. And then it has the domino effect of other teams looking around and saying, hey, he's cutting across the middle of the track. He has an advantage. I got to cut across the middle of the track.
You're talking about all the stuff from load management to tanking.
It incentivizes that. And it just, to me at least, back to the original question you asked about the players, I think it would change the way they play. And I think that it would probably increase.
I meant also the perception,
right?
From fan perception. Cause I think that that's what I found interesting. I wasn't even like, I was letting you guys cook, but I was talking about the perception of the fact that you're going to see guys with making this amount of money and how fans view it because of the numbers attached to it and why it's become like a quote unquote crisis.
But yeah, I think that's the tough thing about that is the money in sports has gotten so big that there is no number that fans are going to look at and say, oh yeah, those guys.
But the NBA is a little bit unique with that. I know there's the outlier contracts like Ohtani or like Patrick Mahomes, but like you have guys in the middle class of the NBA who are like, we've talked about like the best players in the world and like tennis or other sports or golf, and like the middle class of the NBA, I'm talking about on court versus on court earnings are going to be above what the highest paid players in a lot of other sports are. There's going to be outliers in baseball, in the NFL, like very few, but like for the most part, a mid-level exemption guys, he's making $14 million. That's a premier player on an NFL team, and like that's where. But that's like more than the running back. I mean, you have to be Saquon or Derrick Henry coming off a 2,000-yard year. But that's when fans are like, "What the."
And you only get it for 3 years, 2 or 3 years if you're Saquon. You get it for 15 if you're NBA.
And that's why it's unique from the fan perspective for this one.
But I mean, fans have always complained since the 1920s or so about how much professional athletes make, right? And so I think the fan perspective is always going to be hostile to athletes making any money. Like an athlete could make $300,000 a year, and someone who makes $250,000 a year is going to be resentful because they say, well, all this guy does is play a game, right? Whereas I'm doing, I don't know, my job doing content management or whatever it is, right? And so but like the size of the NBA contracts in terms of the motivation, I think it is interesting just because, like, I remember, like, in soccer, right, like, Florian Wirtz signed with Liverpool and everyone was like, oh, my God, it's so much. They're paying him so much. And I looked at the actual contract that he signed and how much he gets paid. He gets paid less than Jeremy Grant. It's like the biggest soccer league in the world, the biggest signing of last year. And everybody in all of Europe is complaining about how much money he makes. And it's like, I don't know, Jeremy Grant is like the 55th best player in the NBA or something like that. And he doesn't even make that much, right? He's like making like a reasonable contract in the NBA. But I think that I agree with Dom, where I just think like once it passes a certain amount that it doesn't, the actual added money doesn't really matter all that much. I don't think it matters too much to the players. I think they do it as an ego thing more than anything. And I don't think it would motivate one player to go from even like 20 million to 50 million, that would change their motivation on whether they wanted to play or whether they want to engage in some of this shame stuff, right? Or they wanted to shame themselves in some sort of way. I think that all of that is pretty constant once you're past a certain threshold.
Yeah, I think that this is like where I want to end this conversation is with like leadership and the decisions that are made in leadership. And I think that while we're focused on basketball, these like impacts and like this like focus on optimization, I think has gotten into football some. And I think football shows itself more in a profit maximization type of way, where I am concerned, and I know it's super early and football is great, but like we got 17 games. They want to go 18 games. Like just this desire, there's no reason to go to 18 games. We're starting to see football teams kind of like give up on the last game of the season when they're out of it, which is something that we never really considered before because you're extending the season. And so like I obviously, far be it from me to give the NFL any advice, but this idea that we can always chase more money, that we can always grow and we can always get bigger, and we run this like we're running a Fortune 500 company, like I get it. It's great. The money's huge. Everyone likes it. But don't pretend like it doesn't have consequences, which gets back to like the Adam Silver conversation. And I'm certainly not one that's out here trying to call for him being fired, but I can't argue any longer that the leadership has been missing there. I just think when you are a leader of any organization or any group, like one of the more important things you have to do is like pick a particular frame through which you are going to look at all of the questions that you are faced with and ask yourself, is this helping or hurting or neutral to my cause? And it feels like he changes his frame every other week. And I would warn it to him in the NFL, in any other league or any other organization, is that you always have to kind of, as corny as it sounds, keep the main thing the main thing. And the main thing is making your product as good as possible. Everything else will sort itself out. Like, that's always how you have to look at it. And they haven't been doing that. And they just do this like whack-a-mole with all these stupid problems that pop up, and everything just trickles down throughout the course of the league to where you got a bunch of players foul baiting and doing all types of weird shit. It's just a whole league of loopholes that is frustrating and annoying. And I think that it's impossible to defend Adam Silver. And it's also hard to point at like specific things that he's done absolutely wrong. It's just like, look where we are, I guess.
Yeah, it seems like the response from him and also a lot of the fans is always, well, just be a grown up and deal with it. This is business, right? That's how it is with the gambling stuff, right? Like his response was about Giannis and Kalashi. I don't really care that much about this stuff, but like his response was basically just like, well, it's a business, right? With tanking, it's like, well, they're optimizing their chances for winning. Although he seems to be saying that this is a problem. But that's been the main justification for Adam Silver, is that the TV packages that he's been able to negotiate are very big, right? And then the sort of glow that he got, the multi-year glow that he got for dealing with the Donald Sterling situation, seems to have passed in a lot of ways. And so now you think about him and you're just like, well, he's gotten these big TV deals, right? And maybe the league is a little bit worse to watch, but maybe that's not his fault because we were at the end of the Steph LeBron era, but he did kind of usher all of that in. But his legacy, I think, will just be those TV deals. And then overseeing this era of basketball that's not all that compelling, right? That doesn't have a compelling on-court product. And then also is mostly just people gossiping about where teams are going to go or what teams are going to do and what players are going to go. And that you've had almost like this product that was built for social media. But I don't know. I mean, I just want to watch games at some level. And it's hard to build narratives around those games when the whole thing is around. Like, do you think that, like, for example, like Reggie Miller versus the Knicks, do you think that type of thing could happen right now? Like that type of multi-year narrative? Because I don't. I just think that like the players would change too much, that there would be too many other distractions, that people would be talking about whether or not Dale Davis was going to get maxed out or not, And back then I just remember I was like, I don't know how much money Dale Davis made in his career. I hope he made a lot, but like it was never a thing I thought about.
I don't know. I mean, I think that what it comes down to, because I still thoroughly enjoy intense basketball games. So like the playoffs, love them. You can't convince me that something's wrong with the NBA when the playoffs start.
Right.
Because they're intense, high-level games. I think the tough thing is throughout the course of the season, as a result of 82 games and 16 teams in the playoffs, not including the additional play-in teams, that you've lowered the value of all of these games. And it's hard for, even if the players are playing hard, which I'm sure they are in many cases, but it's not like full intensity. Even if they are, I'm also watching this game recognizing that it's the equivalent of one NFL play. Like I'll get up and go to the bathroom and miss a play, but like you want me to watch a whole game that has the impact, or less than that, considering how few teams or how many teams make the playoffs. And that to me is more the problem than anything. Like the sport itself, the athletes are great. All of it's fun. I know this because when the playoffs start, awesome. Right. It's incredible. It's fun to watch. You keep the storylines. You watch these teams go back and forth. So I think I actually believe that the Reggie Miller thing could happen again, because that to me is about playoff moments, and then it carries over to regular season. But it's about playoff level intensity. Like I am looking forward to the Spurs and the Thunder in the playoffs this year. Like I believe that that's going to be something that I'm going to care about in the future. The problem is I don't give a about them for the rest of the season. Yeah. No. Anyway, Jay, thank you so much for joining us. This was awesome. We're going to do it again next week. Let's clear out your schedule. Actually, I got flag football next week. We'll do it again.
Oh, you got flag football?
Every week from here on out.
My kid plays flag football too. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's very fun.
Good.
Watch 9-year-old girls flag football is.
You get locked in, you cheer, or what are you, quiet? You yelling?
I don't yell. I just sit and I'm like, my main thought is run the ball. Because the passing doesn't really go. Although last week, I will say we lost to the Longhorns like 36-6 or something like that. And they had a girl on that team who could throw the ball 25 yards in a spiral. And they completed a 25-yard pass, and it was the most amazing athletic feat I think I've seen in 5 years. I was just like, I stood up. I was like, what just happened? And so if you want to see a feat of that, you should come and watch. If you want to watch it in the Bay Area, girls 9-year-old flag football, there is one person who I think is just headed places. I couldn't believe it. I don't think I can throw
I love it.
I can't throw a 25-yard spiral. She just winged it out there. It was amazing. Yeah.
They're still playing for the love of the game out there, 9-year-old
exactly.
Bay Area. They're not playing for the big money. Anyway, Jay, thanks a lot for joining us.
Thank you.
Charlie, thank you. Thanks to all the great producers. Paul, Bill, I love you. We out.
This is the Domonique Foxworth Show.